Hello! We're back to read the last part of The Race to the Moonrise. We were in the middle of chapter 11. Longlegs and Little Basket had met the cliff dwellers, and they were looking for a mug that they need to bring to the Moonrise ceremony. Longlegs warily dangled a leg over the cliff and felt for a small step that had been carved into the rock. His other foot groped for the indented step below. The partial moon was just coming up, but didn't light the cliff face below him. This would be bad enough in daylight, but I really can't see what's below me in the dark, he mumbled, as he slowly made his way down the cliff face. How do little children get here, or people carrying firewood, or meat, or thud? Missing a step, Longlegs crashed to the ground at the feet of the old man. No broken bones? Then come this way. Longlegs brushed himself off and limped after the elder towards the side of the huge recess in the cliff. The moonlight was blocked off from the cliff, making it darker. The sun probably doesn't shine here till late afternoon, he thought grimly. A sudden breeze brought the stench of garbage and human waste to his nose. The old man said, "Another reason I hate these cliff dwellings is the only place you can throw your garbage is in the front of your house." The sound of the chanting rose from the kiva smoke hole. A man skirted around the kiva and headed across the courtyard at the far end of the overhang. Longlegs heard the talking and laughing of families as he passed by the little room snuggled against the back of the overhang. The evening wind whipped sharply through the overhang. He felt terribly cold and very homesick. "Here we are. Good, she's home. Mug woman, may we enter?" A woman's voice replied, and the elder pulled back the cloth door. A large slab rested next to the outside of the doorway. Just like our winter doors, Longlegs thought. He followed the elder into the smoky room. The squeal of children greeted him, and through a veil of smoke he saw several little bodies squirming through the T-shaped doorway into the next room. He squatted on the hard mud floor and looked at the woman across from him. Her face was weathered but pleasant. She wore her hair short with bangs. Longlegs remembered the shy, unmarried Hopi girl with the huge hair whorls. Weaver had told him that after girls get married they often cut their hair off and use it to make twine and nets to catch rabbits. The old man explained to the woman that Longlegs needed a mug for his sister to offer at the Moonrise ceremony. The woman called the children into the next room. A pudgy child of about 5 years peeked shyly through the small doorway and immediately withdrew. "The stranger won't hurt you. Look, he has a big red bird on his shoulder. Bring some of my new mugs for him to look at." A rustling was heard, then a little girl appeared with a mug in each hand. She carefully climbed over the bottom of the T-shaped doorway and walked slowly towards Longlegs, watching the mugs intently, as if to keep them from dropping. Next, a younger boy, who held a mug carefully in both hands, his face screwed up in concentration as he carried it to Longlegs. The next child was older and carried 5 mugs tied together with yucca twine. They retreated to the other room, and the same process was repeated. Soon there were more than 16 mugs awaiting Longlegs' inspection, all white with painted black with elaborate designs of triangles, small squares, zigzags, and scrolls. The old man chuckled and said, "The women in this cliff dwelling are known throughout the mesa for making the finest mugs. Mug woman and her cousin paint the best designs. The gods will appreciate an offering of any of these." Longlegs picked up one. The flat base was larger than his palm, and the sides were tapered to a flat rim. The handle started at the rim and curved all the way down to the base. Longlegs thought of the rounded ladles his family used for dipping water from jars. The mugs could be set flat on the ground. "I'll have to tell my mother about these," he thought. Another wave of homesickness washed over him. The smallest child crawled onto Longlegs' lap, reaching to his shoulder to pet Squawk. The macaw nibbled gently at his fat fingers. Laughing, the little one withdrew his hand and reached for a nearby mug. As he picked it up, the one beside it rose as well. They were connected to each other where their handles should have been. "That's the one we'll take," declared Longlegs. The child's big brown eyes lit up in glee under his long bangs. He carefully handed the double mug to Longlegs, giggling and tottering over to his mother. "What do you have to trade for it?" the woman asked Longlegs as she cuddled the little boy in her arms. Longlegs looked at her plain necklace of white snail shells and wished he could offer some of his turquoise jewelry he'd already traded away. "All I have left to trade is a feather from Squawk." He thought he felt the bird stiffen at the mention of his name. The woman's eyes widened. "We could tie it to a prayer stick in our sleeping room. The little ones would have nice dreams." Longlegs was glad she didn't want more than one feather. Squawk was looking less fluffy every day. When Longlegs and a thinner Squawk returned to Little Basket, it was after midnight. Although he felt fairly safe, Longlegs barely slept. Several village representatives were sleeping in the next room and snored so loudly that Squawk started to imitate them. Longlegs wanted to move outside, but he didn't want to wake Little Basket. Squawk shortly became bored and quieted down, but the din in the next room kept Longlegs awake for the rest of the night. Little Basket showed a spark of pleasure when she saw the double mug as they packed to leave the next morning. But as they wound down the trail along the sandstone rim, she became silent and distant again. The old man who had taken Longlegs to the cliff dwelling led them to a stunted cornfield on a trail at the other side of the mesa. "This is a shorter trail back to the river you were following yesterday. Keep following it upstream to its headwaters. The trail heads east over several small mountain ranges and ends up at Finger Rocks. I hope Little Basket's offering pleased the gods. If they don't, we all might have to move into those wretched cliff dwellings." They hiked off the mesa and followed the shallow river to the top of a narrow mountain range. There were a few small communities along the way, but they dared not stop. They only had 4 more days to get to Moonrise ceremony. Longlegs noticed that most of the little towns had been abandoned, some probably before he was born. He wondered why the far north people seemed to be gathering together in larger communities. Were they afraid of strangers or each other? He was stunned by the number of trees that had been cut, even at great distances from the village. They encountered other people heading towards Finger Rocks. Longlegs was tempted to ask them for help, but he wasn't sure what they could do. Little Basket had to present the offerings herself. On the 4th night, they camped on the east side of a low mountain range. Little Basket had not spoken to Longlegs for 2 days, but kept mumbling to herself. She chanted strange words again in her sleep. "She's talking with the gods all the time now," thought Longlegs. He slept little, and the next morning woke up so exhausted that he feared neither one of them would make it to Finger Rocks. He reached over and tugged at his sister's skinny arm sticking out from her rabbit fur blanket. "Time to get up, Little Basket. We should get to Finger Rocks tonight if we hurry." Her eyes slowly opened. Longlegs gasped. They were so bloodshot they looked pure red. They stared wildly at him as if she didn't know who he was. When she tried to get up, she yelled something he couldn't understand and slumped to the ground unconscious. Longlegs tried to calm the panic growing inside him. He covered his sister with her blanket and frantically looked around for some fallen aspen trees that may have been missed for firewood. He finally found 2 long poles. Lying them side by side, he tied them apart at one end and a little wider than his waist at the opposite end a bit farther. Quickly, he wove some branches between the poles. He placed Little Basket and her pack on the crude carrier. He picked up the narrower end, a pole in each hand, and began to drag the carrier down the trail. Squawk flew up to his head, but Longlegs brushed the bird off. "Sorry, old friend, I don't want your claws digging into my head today." Squawk snorted and flew back to the carrier, where he perched on Little Basket's stomach. Longlegs glanced back at them. Squawk's red feathers were certainly more ruffled and scruffy than they'd been at the beginning of the journey. Even Squawk is exhausted, he thought. At midday, Longlegs saw a lone pinyon pine tree in a short distance off the trail. He dragged the carrier over to it. He could walk no further. Making sure Little Basket's face was in the shade, he lay down next to the carrier. Squawk nestled next to him, but looked up suddenly. Longlegs thought he saw a flash behind a tree. He tried to focus his vision, but his vision grew blurry. "Little Basket," he muttered, but his voice faded into the depths of sleep. Chapter 12. Longlegs opened his eyes. The sun had traveled far across the sky during his nap. He bound up and stared at the pole carrier. Little Basket, his pack, and Squawk were gone. He frantically searched for clues and noticed large sandal tracks by the carrier. He studied the tracks carefully. Whoever took Little Basket was wearing sandals so worn that his toes touched the ground, he thought. "Oi, I wish I hadn't fallen asleep." Longlegs raced east, following the tracks down the sandy road. "He's taking her to Finger Rocks," Longlegs thought. The sun was only a fist above the horizon when he finally saw the tall spires of the 2 Finger Rocks. They towered majestically atop a ridge, high above the valley floor. Longlegs saw the small shapes of many people gathering near the spires. Suddenly, from behind a twisted juniper tree, a man leapt out and grabbed Longlegs by the throat, dragging him to the ground and began choking him. Longlegs struggled for the knife, but the man had pinned his arms with his massive legs. Longlegs thought his ribs would snap. The man with the tattooed-covered face sneered and jabbed his legs harder into Longlegs' ribs. "You thought you left me for dead, didn't you? I guess that snake had used his poison on some poor rabbit and left little for me." Longlegs felt himself losing consciousness as the man's fingers dug into his throat. Everything was blurred except for the necklace of purple shells and turquoise beads hanging from the thick neck above him. Abruptly, the death grip loosened. The man slumped to his side, and Longlegs gasped for air. His attacker lay next to him, a huge rock beside his bloody head. Longlegs could see no movement in the man's chest. The evil guard was dead. Longlegs staggered to his feet. A thin man was running down the trail. "Wait!" Longlegs called. But the man didn't stop. He wore a ragged kilt, and his long hair was matted and wild. Longlegs followed his rescuer up the winding trail to the ridge top. A stone village of empty rooms was spread across the narrow ridge. The man disappeared into the crowd, gathering at finger rocks. Longlegs scanned the faces in the crowd. He might have seen Little Basket, he thought. A fearsome voice boomed from the base of the finger rocks. "Our son leaves Father Sky to make way for Moon. Every 19 years offerings are placed at the altar to make the moon rise between the finger rocks." Longlegs observed the owner of the voice. Necklaces of knuckle bones covered his massive chest, and he wore an elaborate feathered headdress. His thick black hair almost touched the ground. He was taller than anyone Longlegs had seen. The silent crowd stared in wonder and fear at him. "Thunder Voice," guessed Longlegs. The priest continued, "The medicine girl from the south country did not arrive with the offerings we requested. We hope the moon will still rise and linger between the spires. If not, we fear all the North County will soon be abandoned, such as what happened here at the old village of Finger Rocks." Longlegs' heart pounded so loudly he was certain that those around him could hear it. He listened carefully as Thunder Voice finished his speech. "Our brothers of the great ceremonial center displeased the gods. Their farmland is spoiled, their village deserted." He waved his arms at the vacant houses. "Even this village, which was built to supply the great ceremonial center with wood beams, lies in ruins. Our brothers to the west fight among themselves for food. Some want to move into the cliff overhangs to protect themselves from their neighbors." Longlegs felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a familiar face. "I'm Ravenclaw. I was at your village many moons ago requesting the presence of your sister here," he said. "Where is she? The priests are angered she did not come. I fear that you and your family will suffer." "She almost made it, but someone took her," Longlegs stammered. "I don't know." There was a commotion near the altar. A man with half of his body and face painted black approached Thunder Voice and whispered something to him. The priest looked startled. The painted man darted back into the crowd. Shortly, he and another man emerged, supporting the body of a girl. Longlegs squinted. A red bird perched on the girl's limp shoulder. "Little Basket!" Longlegs cried. He tried to push his way through the crowd towards the altar, but the spectators were jammed so tightly he couldn't move. He yelled for his sister. Drums started to pound, and the priest started to chant, droning out his cries. The painted man and another with ragged clothes and unkempt hair carried Little Basket to the altar. Longlegs felt a flood of relief when he saw her try to stand for herself. The skinny man with the wild hair stood next to her, holding her whenever she wavered. His long matted hair covered most of his face. "That's the man that rescued me," thought Longlegs. Someone presented Little Basket with Longlegs' pack, and the ragged men helped her open it. One by one she gently placed on the altar the bowl with the painted moon rabbit from the mountain people, the ancient clay doll from the canal people, the white cotton cape from the volcano people, and the white clamshell from the Great Salt Bay, and the double mug from the cliff dwellers. She stumbled back from the altar. The crowd joined the priests in their chants. The moon edged between the two spires. The drums beat louder. Little Basket raised her thin arms towards the moon. It exploded, white and huge, between the rocks. Silence settled in the crowd. In a voice strange and distant, Little Basket spoke. "I have visited with the gods during the last few days. They gave me a message to give to you." She paused to gather strength. The thin man beside her translated her words to Thunder Voice. Little Basket slowly continued. "The gods are not punishing you. They are telling you that you have been in one place too long." The moon traveled higher between the rocks and then appeared to stand still. The crowd gasped and stared at Little Basket. She continued. "Your numbers are too great, and you are out of balance with the plants and animals." Thunder Voice studied the girl intently as her words were translated. "Soon you will tire of quarreling amongst yourselves for food, and the gods will give you a sign that it is time to move. The Hopi Parrot clan has fulfilled its migration promises. You will have to do the same." Thunder Voice asked sternly, "Where will we go?" "We will know when the time comes. You will survive. The gods have willed it." The crowd was silent. The full moon began to move again, squeezing upwards between the rock spires. "It will be so if the gods desire," said Thunder Voice. "We will not argue with the gods when they tell us to leave. Let us thank them and the moon. We will feast in their honor." The people burst into high-pitched yay and began to disperse. Longlegs pushed through the crowds towards the altar. "Little Basket," he shouted, "are you all right?" She turned her face towards him, her eyes searching his eager face. Finally, she flashed a smile of recognition and hugged him tightly. "I'm so glad to see you," she said. Squawk flew from her shoulder and landed noisily on the boy's head. Longlegs noticed the ragged man making his way through the crowd. "Come back!" he cried. "Stay here, Little Basket. I have to thank that man for saving my life." He sped after him. Little Basket hesitated, then followed. It was easy to follow the man by moonlight. The ridge narrowed as the trail led them down. Suddenly, off to the right, Longlegs saw a figure crouched behind the branches of a tree. "Please come out. We want to talk to you," said Longlegs. The thin man moved out into the open. Little Basket walked down the trail towards him. The man turned his head away. Slowly, Little Basket stepped close and gently pulled the tangled hair from his face. Longlegs heard her gasp. "Father!" she cried. The man stood frozen. Longlegs rushed down the trail. "Father, don't you know it's us? We're your children," he said. The man turned his face towards him. Fear and confusion shone in his eyes. A tear rolled down his dirty cheek. "Yes, I know you," he finally said. "I am ashamed to have you see me this way." "We heard what happened to you. We are so proud of you," said Longlegs. Little Basket reached up and wiped a tear from his cheek. "We'll take you home and make you well again. We need you." Longlegs said, "You were the one that brought Little Basket to the ceremony, weren't you?" "Yes," said his father. "I heard rumors that a young medicine girl from the south country was coming. I blame myself for the difficult journey. I must have told of your powers, Little Basket, while recovering from my fall. I cannot remember things well." Little Basket put her arm around his thin waist. Squawk leaped from her shoulder onto his matted head. Their father smiled. Then his expression turned serious as he said, "I came to Finger Rocks to see if it was really my daughter who was coming. When you didn't arrive, I looked for you. I found you both sleeping near the trail. I could only carry one of you at a time, so I brought Little Basket and the pack with the offerings. The priests were angry you weren't here." Longlegs said, "Then you returned for me and saved me from the man from the canal people. He was after Little Basket for stealing Squawk from the medicine man when she heard he would be sacrificed." "Squawk, good bird," said Squawk as he fluttered over to Little Basket's shoulder. "I've never killed a man," said Father, "but this man is going to kill you, my son." He looked at Longlegs fondly. "Why didn't my wife's brother guide you here?" "He came as far as the Hopi villages, but his legs gave out. He will journey home when he feels stronger." Longlegs put his arm around his father's thin shoulders. "Let's camp below the ridge of the Finger Rocks," he said. "The people will sing all night up here and it would be difficult to sleep. We need to rest for our long journey home." Longlegs and Little Basket gently turned their father around. Little Basket took his hand and led him down the trail. Longlegs followed. At the bend in the trail, Longlegs stopped and looked back towards Finger Rocks. The full moon rose above them. He smiled as he found the gray shape of the moon rabbit. "Thank you, my friend. Our journey was a success." Longlegs turned and followed his father, sister, and Squawk down the moonlit trail. They made it. I love that story. So I will see you next time when I read you some other really cool books since we finished that chapter book. And I hope you've all been following along. As always, lots of love, and I wish you well.